Oh, my God.
Oh, I don't know. We won't call them fascist comments. Fascism. Fascist. Call fascism. Fascism. Just fascist. Fascist.
Notions of fascism. Xenophobic, racist, demagogic, racist, sexist, xenophobic, autocratic, and fascistic. Donald Trump is a fascist.
Someone like a fascist or a tyrant or an autocrat.
Fascist rhetoric. Fascist language. Fascists.
I'm glad that you're starting talking about fascism. Hitler.
Right. Fascist rhetoric. He's talking the way fascists talk. It's autocratic. Fascist. Nazi Germany. Before the rise of Hitler, fascist language.
To Hitler, fascist, Hitler. Adolf Hitler.
Hitler. But Hitler.
From what Adolf Hitler preached in the early 30s. Let's just say it once and for all.
You know, Morning Joe really is for people with 95 IQs who think they have 120 IQs. But in case you didn't already know that, I hope that supercut of what they talk about on Morning Joe when they're discussing Donald Trump. I saved you, I don't know, that show's on for like 3-4 hours in the morning, you know, just sitting around. Joe Scarborough, waxing philosophical on MSNBC. That's right, just doing the little dance for the libs. Oh, Joe is a Republican, but now he's seen the light. Do your little dance for the libs, Joe. Do what they want, like a little puppet, little marionette. Oh, they pay you very well. Who needs integrity? Who needs to stand for something, to care about something? Oh, I'm sorry, it's all because of Trump? Scarborough and Mika were super buddy-buddy with Trump while he was running for president. But then he decided he didn't like him so much. So now he's a fascist. What frauds. Oh, the worst people in America are TV journalists. They really are the worst. The worst. The most worthless as compared to their pay scale are TV journalists. And the most replaceable and yet most arrogant at the same time. It's pretty amazing. Producer Mark, where did that supercut even come from? That was great. I just want to give it a hat. Do we know?
I believe Tom Elliott from Gradian.
Oh, Gradian. Okay. Because that's a great one. Just fascism. Oh, he's a fascist. Oh, he's a fascist. Oh, he's a fascist. How are we even having this conversation anymore? Donald Trump is a fascist because of what exactly? Because he sounds like a fascist? How is that true? Like, what are they even saying? It's just words. Fascism for the left, which, as we know, fascism is a ideology that shares the same roots. It's a collectivist ideology, shares the same roots of communism. And the fascists and the communists were fighting over the same recruits in the 1930s and into the 1940s. And, you know, there's not, you know, democratic socialism is what the fascists in Nazi Germany were called. Nonetheless, they say this. It reminds me. There's a movie from the 1980s. I think it might be a Whit Stillman movie called Barcelona. And there's an American who's like a naval attaché, who's clearly a Reagan-style Republican, and he walks around. And these left-wing Spaniards, because Spain was very left-wing at the time. There are all these countries, European countries, that, you know, are much less impressive now than they were 300, 400, 500 years ago, and they want to blame somebody, so they tend to blame America. There's that. Greece, it's definitely true, and Greece hasn't been that awesome, and oh god, going back now a couple thousand years, you know. But you go back to the Barcelona movie, and they just walk around, and people call an American who wears a military uniform, they just say fascist. That became the political slam that they would throw around that. And it was true for a while. People would just say fascist is a word that is used to mean, I think your politics are ugly and I don't like you. But that's not what fascism actually is. So I think it's interesting that they complain about the demagoguery of the other side, or they say that Trump is a demagogue and of course a fascist. But then they use terms that are inaccurate to describe a guy that they don't like just because they're smearing him effectively. That's what they're doing. But this is all part of the cry more lib phenomenon. Cry more lib, as we should say to them, about Amy Coney Barrett. And I'm going to say this. I plan on being a sore winner if we are victorious in this reelection. I'm not going to say, oh, it's okay, libs. You know, you'll get them next time, and we're all Americans and everything else. No. I mean, we all are Americans, and the country's going to be better off if Trump wins, but no sympathy. No sympathy for the libs if they lose politically, right? Like I said, they get the benefit of living in a country that will be wealthier, better, more rule of law based, more prosperous. So they'll be safer They'll be wealthier. They'll be treated equally under the law under a Trump presidency more than they would under a Biden presidency. So that's why I don't feel sorry for them, because it's just an emotional state that will be violated for them. It's all psychological. It's not based in reality. And of course, there are left-wing interests and things that won't benefit as much from Trump winning. But I mean, your average American, even if they don't know it, would be better off with Trump as president for 4 more years. Joe Biden is a loser. Democrats have known this for decades, but Hillary was supposed to be their dynasty for 8 years. And we know this. They tried. She lost to Obama. They tried again. She lost to Trump, right? It was all on Hillary. And they didn't have a bench that they could go to. So they put forward this guy who's, it's like they've brought a journeyman professional, basketball player out of retirement. And everyone's like, look, the guy's got 2 bad knees. He was never that good to begin with. And they're saying, no, let's make him the franchise player of a brand new expansion team. He's worth $20 million a year. We're looking at them like, you guys are nuts. We know who this guy is. This guy's impressive. Why would we? I mean, this is there's so many fundamental questions that Democrats can't answer today that they should be forced to answer. Why would Democrats expect us to believe that a presidential candidate who had run 3 times previously and who was a 3rd tier, even 4th tier candidate then, now when he's past his prime, too old for the job, clearly shows signs of slowing down election, now he should be the leader of the free world? He's just a retread. I mean, this is a rebrand of a weak brand. Whatever works. That's all you're going to hear. And the way they plan to get this done is merely by saying over and over again that Trump is a fascist and that he's basically Hitler. And meanwhile, the people that are telling you if you don't wear a mask constantly, including outdoors, for which there is no scientific evidence to support that that's a good idea. None. Doesn't exist. They can't have, there's not a single study that shows there is any considerable risk whatsoever. Not one. Outdoors. Doesn't exist. Walk around New York City right now, 95% of people on the street are wearing masks outside by themselves. And people say, oh, Buck, but maybe it's more. No, it's not more convenient. It's annoying and uncomfortable. They're doing it because they've been brainwashed. All right? I keep my mask in my back pocket so that if I have to go into a store or something, I can, and so I do. But in that environment where we have such an abuse of science, such an abuse of these, they're claiming that Trump is the fascist? If he had even authoritarian tendencies, never mind an actual authoritarian design on the future of this country, he was given the greatest opening imaginable for that. A pandemic disease that they say he didn't take seriously enough. Trump could have been the one to say, federal executive order, shut down the following businesses. Federal executive order from the White House, from the desk of the president. Everyone has to do X, Y, and Z, and he didn't. I mean, some things obviously shut down the travel, but I'm talking about really oppressive tactics to deal with this virus, including counterproductive ones. The most oppressive voices during this have been Democrats all along. Some Republicans have gone along with them, but the people pushing for the most draconian, scientifically unsupported responses to this virus have been Democrats, but they call Trump the fascist? Look, ultimately, it's just they don't like him, and so they're going to say terrible things about him. Whether they're true or not doesn't matter in the least to them. They simply do not care. They'll say anything that they think will work in the public mind to make him seem like a bad person, a person of bad character who's done a bad job. The words are almost irrelevant. They could call him a stupid potty head or something, and like a 3-year-old, a stupid, silly, whatever. I can't even think of what 3-year-olds say, but you know what I'm saying? I mean, it'd have the same effect. I mean, this is what they're doing. It's just, blah, I don't like Trump. I don't like Trump. John Heilman, another one of these lib journos who's just sort of clinging to a former relevance, and now that people know more about the world, I think they know that they should not listen to people like this. Here's what he says about Trump. Play 5.
And someone commented, the quote was, "Nice death cult you got there, GOP." And that really is, I mean, this is the other thing. It goes back to another, one of the core, I mean, it really does. I'm using a phrase like death cult about one of the great American political parties in our nation's history. To say that we would have once seemed hyperbolic, but it increasingly does feel like the Republican Party has become a death cult, and it's all about Donald Trump. And I do think, again, one of the things that sets Trump apart, like what are the things that set Trump apart from every other president? The pathology of the lying, the cruelty, the not taking this, not making the virus central when any other president of any party that we've ever experienced in our lifetimes would have made the virus front and center.
Republicans are a death cult. Yeah, we want people to die. Sure, we don't care about people dying. Where did the most people die from this pandemic per capita? Blue states, run by Democrats, where Democrats are in charge of state and local health authorities, and Democrats are in charge of setting policies. New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, the worst hit place, Illinois, Michigan, the worst hit places by COVID-19. Democrats in charge. But Trump is running the death cult. Governor Cuomo sends thousands of seniors with COVID-19 back into their nursing homes by order of the state, creating a huge spike in deaths in those nursing homes from COVID. But Trump is running a death cult. Right. Because of what decision that he made exactly? Oh, his rhetoric or his tone or... It's pathetic, isn't it? Their arguments are just garbage. Charges today in the case involving Brianna Taylor, a EMT who was killed in Louisville, Kentucky back in March. This case has gotten a tremendous amount of attention from the media. You've seen celebrities like LeBron James. I mean, huge, followings on social media have taken a lot of time to focus on this case. Here's what we know after today: there are 3 officers involved in this raid. It was executing a search warrant. We shouldn't call it a raid. It was executing a search warrant, and we have been told that it was a no-knock raid. That was what they said. Turns out that wasn't true. They did knock. The police did announce their presence. So they banged on the door and said, "Police, open up." And then a guy involved here, Kenneth Walker, who is believed to perhaps alleged to be involved in the drug trade, he shot at those officers. The officers returned fire, and in returning fire, they accidentally hit Brianna Taylor. Look, it's a tragedy. All right. That woman did not deserve to get shot at all. It was not justified in the sense that she posed any kind of a threat and that the officers meant to shoot her. But she was in the line of fire for officers who were returning fire because one of the officers was shot by Brianna Taylor's boyfriend. So here we have a case where the cops say, "Open up, police," and then they enter after giving notice of and some guy pulls out a gun and shoots an officer. What do we expect the officers to do? What is what does the mob, and we're preparing for riots across the country now because of this case. What are we demanding of police officers in this circumstance? How many of them have to get shot before they return fire? Now, we're really to believe that this guy, Kenneth Walker, didn't know that these were cops? It's 3 a.m. They're knocking on the door. They're saying police. And he opens up and starts shooting. There is a culpability here for not knowing who you're shooting at, too. Meaning who you're trying to shoot. The problem on the other end here is that police, in trying to return fire on Kenneth Walker, hit a bystander in this case. Now, there are charges that have come from this. And I'm trying to read into this because it's just breaking today, breaking now actually as I'm addressing you with this, and I'm trying to make sure that I get these correctly. But there are 3 charges of effectively reckless endangerment from one of the officers. From what I understand, it's that they're saying he fired his weapon too many times under the circumstances and endangered other people. It's a Class D felony, could go to prison for 5 years. So really, they wanted to charge an officer with something so that they could say that they put charges out there because people are so so upset about the death of this woman. And look, it is, just be very clear about this. It is a tragedy that Brianna Taylor died. Okay? It is a tragedy this young woman died. It was an accident. It was a tragic accident. These law enforcement officers were not trying to shoot her. They were returning fire, and it was in a dark hallway in an apartment building, and she got hit. And, the family is going to receive a large, I believe actually already has received a large payment from the city of Louisville. I mean, this should not have happened. But to say that the officers involved were criminal, were racist, were murderers, which is what we've been led to believe by the media for a long time here, right? This has been a BLM rallying cry over Brianna Taylor for months. It is not the case. It is simply not the case that they murdered this woman, that it was excessive or brutal force. It was exactly what I described to you. Police returning fire legitimately. And the black attorney general for Kentucky said exactly that. It was a justified use of force from police officers to open fire on Kenneth Walker. So, this is just a question of, what are you supposed to expect? What are the officers going to do? Now, the charges against them, or rather against one officer, 2 of the officers are facing no charges. I mean, to me, this is just they want to say that they found a criminal charge here. And this is a troubling precedent that keeps getting set in different places across the country where, because the mob is so upset, let's at least give them something. Let's charge to placate the mob. We saw this in that terrible case in Omaha where there was a lawful self-defense and the individual there, Gardner, was essentially fed to the angry mob. I mean, fed to the wolves over this one because it was a black BLM protester who attacked him, and the mob doesn't want anyone to think they're allowed to defend themselves against the tactics of BLM, so they brought in a special prosecutor. Here we have the Kentucky AG saying we're going to charge these men, even though officers Mattingly and Cosgrove, charge a man, one officer, even though officers Mattingly and Cosgrove were justified in their use of force because the third officer fired too many rounds. I mean, put a reckless endangerment charge. Come on. We know what this is, folks. Putting a criminal charge on someone to try to mollify the mob. And you know what? It's not going to work. Get ready for mayhem, because that's what the left does. What does losing your home have to do with COVID-19? Well, COVID-19 has led to a huge surge in cybercrime. FBI thinks about 75%. And home title theft is a cybercrime. Here's how it works. The bad guys find your home's information online. They find the title. It exists out there in the cyber realm. Then they take you, kick you off, put themselves on using a quitclaim deed, and take out loans against your home's equity. You often just find out about this when the payment notices arrive, or perhaps even a foreclosure notice, and the usual identity theft services do not protect you. You need to create a virtual barrier around your home's title with a home title lock. Just go to HomeTitleLock.com, use the promo code BUCK. That will get you 30 free days of protection. HomeTitleLock.com, promo code BUCK for 30 free days of protection. You can also check and see if you're already a victim of this crime and don't even know it. HomeTitleLock.com, promo code BUCK. Let's get a view from the front lines of the fight, friends. We now have Congressman Matt Gaetz with us. He is of course, congressman from down in Florida, also podcast host. He's got a new book out, Firebrand, Dispatches from the Front Lines of the MAGA Revolution. He is indeed on those front lines. Congressman, great to have you on.
Oh, thanks for having me, Buck.
Let's start with this, man, because you're in D.C. right now. You're in the Capitol. There are protests going on, more stuff expected. What do you think is going to be happening on Capitol Hill while we have this super intense election and then monumentally fierce battle over a Supreme Court seat going on at the same time?
Well, the Michael Bloomberg political operation wrote a memo that had a few things in it that were right. One is that it's very difficult to convince people to vote for Joe Biden, that there needs to be a mobilization effort more than a persuasion effort. They view that as a losing battle. And also that Donald Trump is likely to win the vote on Election Day. And so the entire scenario you see playing out, from the legal vector to kind of the street theater that you see going on, just outside the window where I am right now, is that they want to create space between Donald Trump's Election Day win and some other moment to try to deprive him of the presidency or undermine the legitimacy of his presidency. And during the pendency of that period of time, they want to create confusion over mail-in ballots, when they were postmarked, what can be counted, and the hopes that that will allow them to take power, even if it is not that which is vested to their political operation on Election Day as a result of the Electoral College. So I think we're in that dire a circumstance, and I think that it just shows how transformational President Trump is, that these are the links they're going to.
And we've seen reporting that the Bloomberg operation is spending a lot of money to pay off. I mean, you're a congressman from Florida, so you know the political scene down there as well as the national level very well. They're spending money. Bloomberg is spending money to pay off the debts of convicted felons as part of this mobilization. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, well, not all convicted felons, not if you're white, Buck. So they have written memos identifying specific racial and voter propensity segments of the felon population that are trying to get their rights restored. And they're going and paying off those specific things to try to incentivize the vote. Now, that's a very dangerous thing to do. It's a felony in the state of Florida to either directly or indirectly offer something of value in exchange for someone altering their voting behavior, not even who they would vote for or not, but whether they would vote or not. And in this case, you literally have the Bloomberg political operatives writing the confession saying that they are doing these payoffs for these political outcomes. I've encouraged our state attorney general to direct the statewide prosecutor to start an investigation. She says she's on top of it. And so I'm hopeful that we'll be able to determine if this is even legal, what's going on. Because let me just tell you something. If Sheldon Adelson was forgiving casino debt for people that were going to go vote for Donald Trump, they would be storming his house like it was Roger Stone 2.0.
That is a terrifying thought, by the way. It's like a Zero Dark 30 moment. All of a sudden, they come in through the windows. They're rappelling in with the MP5s to get Roger Stone, of course, as we know. Very, very different when there's a Democrat who is in the government's crosshairs. Tell us what you're expecting here for how they can block the Amy Coney Barrett nomination. We know that they can't do it on votes. We know they can't do it under the Constitution, but the Democrats, Pelosi and Schumer out there, among others, are making this case that Pelosi said a quiver of arrows. Schumer is, well, he's just being Schumer, making stuff up, but he's saying, oh, we're going to find a way. Is there something we're not looking? I've been saying, Matt, that they're going to lie down in the streets. They're going to block access to the building. They're going to pull the fire alarm. They're going to, things like that. Is there something we're missing, either procedurally or otherwise?
No, I mean, look, we have the power and we damn well better use it or we'll demoralize our own base. My expectation is that Mitch McConnell is going to hold this vote very proximate to the election, probably before the election. I'm also expecting the Democrats to try to use various procedural endeavors to try to jam that, but I don't think they'll be successful. But what's rich to me, Buck, is that they spent years saying that Donald Trump was undermining our institutions and that he was this like great threat to throw off all norms of democracy. And now, because he's likely to get reelected, Democrats are talking about packing the court and like maybe even impeaching the Attorney General of the United States just to create a procedure bomb in the Senate. Ludicrous.
Yeah, they're threatening the very institutions that they claim Trump has been a threat to for years. I think the irony is lost on very few people that have not suffered from intense TDS over the last few years. So your book, Matt, you're talking about being on the front lines of the MAGA revolution, and right now, obviously, the president's out there making his case to the American people about why he should get 4 more years. For you, I mean, when you're speaking to either your constituents or you're just addressing a national audience on cable news or shows like this one, what are the biggest points that you make about why Trump should get? Why has he earned? The first time around it was based on ideas, charisma, the promise of Trump, right? Now we've had him for 4 years. What are the big areas where you say, look at this and it will be that based on what we've already seen?
Donald Trump has changed politics by keeping promises. You look at our relationship with Israel. You look at the way we became an energy-producing country, an energy-dominant country, and then, of course, building the strongest economy that the United States has ever known. This is a guy who's done it once. He can do it again. But I think he's done something even more important for the next generation of conservatives. He's led a political realignment. No longer are we going to be the Republican Party that invades everywhere and invites every illegal alien to cross our borders just because it's good for corporate America to have cheap labor. No longer are we going to accept trade deals that impoverish regular towns in our country so some multinational corporation can add a little bit to their next bottom line. So I think there's a real America First theme to our politics. I think that's animated in specific policies. I think that Republicans, frankly, didn't do the president a great deal of service at the beginning when we had unified control of the government. We should have done a lot more on immigration. We should have done a lot more on entitlement reform. I blame the failed leadership of Paul Ryan on that. And look, the reason the Russia probe went on so long is because you had folks like Trey Gowdy out there shilling for the FBI, saying that they were doing nothing wrong when the rest of us were saying, look, this is a coup underway because they do not like this man so much. They will let any end, or they will let the ends justify any means. And now, in fact, we know people are getting indicted and pleading guilty for changing evidence before a secret court. So the book is kind of my walk through that and my hope that going forward, we're a populist, excited party, and that we're not going back to the Bushes or the Cheneys or the next iteration of establishment conservatism.
How is it looking for us in Florida right now? This is obviously, I think people would say Florida, Ohio are the two most important. You got to get Florida and Ohio. Are we going to be in a position on Election Day to win? And why? You're optimistic, I'm optimistic. So we both think Trump will win Florida. But why is Trump going to win Florida? I want the audience to hear that.
So, I'll give you a look at 2018. I was very involved in Governor DeSantis' campaign. There was no poll we ever took during the general election where we were ahead. We were always 2, 3, 4 points behind. And then, some polls we would maybe be tied. At the end, Ron DeSantis wins a very close race. The turnout model in Florida, I think, is going to really be good for the president because you got a lot of seniors that are NPAs that are not here for the woketopia. The woketopia for senior voters in Florida is year-round golf, not riots in the streets and reparations coming out of people's bank accounts. And so I think that will help the state. Also, Miami-Dade County looks very different for Joe Biden than it did for Hillary Clinton. A lot of working-class Hispanics in Miami-Dade County, maybe just a generation or two removed from actual socialism. And they don't want to go back. They want to be a part of building a great country. And they, I think, are very turned off by the Joe Biden, Kamala Harris embrace of what you see going on in Portland and San Francisco and some of these places where quality of life is deteriorating rapidly.
How's the president's spirits these days? I know you're in constant contact with him.
Hey, he is real excited about this Supreme Court pick. You know, when we talked about it the other day, he talked about the sizzle, the substance, just getting someone that was a total package that could really go in there and add something to the jurisprudence of our country and really build on this Trump legacy of reshaping the court. Like all these Republicans that were the never Trumpers and, oh, he violates norms. Like, would they have preferred Hillary Clinton to make these three picks? We'd have like the purple-haired, genderless warlord from the Chaz as the next Supreme Court justice, rather than the folks we have there who I think are going to interpret the Constitution and not embrace the judicial activism that's very anti-democratic.
Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz, everybody. Download his podcast. Also, pick up his new book, Firebrand, Dispatches from the Front Lines of the MAGA Revolution. Amazon.com, other places you can grab it. Congressman, great to see you, man. Come back soon.
Thanks, Buck. I appreciate it, man.
We've talked about the Brianna Taylor case today and the decision that was made there in Kentucky. And I also mentioned the Gardner case, who tragically was pushed to commit suicide because they were charging him with murder when he defended himself against assault outside of his own bar in Omaha, Nebraska. And now we have more footage as well in the Kyle Rittenhouse case. I mean, people are saying that he committed first-degree murder. That's an outrage. Here's the Fox write-up of this additional video footage that aired last night on Tucker Carlson's show. Newly released video footage from the night Illinois teenager Kyle Rittenhouse shot and killed two people during unrest in Kenosha, Wisconsin last month could support the claim that the 17-year-old was being attacked by demonstrators and acted in self-defense. The footage, provided by a nonprofit organization affiliated with Rittenhouse's defense attorney, was shown on Tucker Carlson tonight on Tuesday and raised questions about the events that led up to the shooting. Rittenhouse faces felony charges, including first-degree intentional homicide. Okay, they're charging this kid with first-degree murder, folks, but among many other charges. His attorneys argue Rittenhouse acted in self-defense. So here's what you see in the video. The footage shows Rittenhouse running with a fire extinguisher. Rosenbaum appears to chase after Rittenhouse when a single gunshot is fired. Now, Joseph Rosenbaum, is a convicted child molester who was committing arson. So those are the kind of people that are part of the BLM movement. Okay, convicted child molester Joseph Rosenbaum was lighting things on fire. Quote, surrounded Rittenhouse squeezed four shots in Rosenbaum's direction. Seconds later, three additional shots were reportedly fired by an unknown shooter. One bullet grazed Rosenbaum's head, while another penetrated his right groin, his left thigh, and his back. Kyle Rittenhouse fired four shots initially that night. Another four were fired. We still don't know who fired them. No one else has been arrested or charged. At this point, according to the video's narration, an unidentified protester strikes Rittenhouse in the head, causing him to fall to the ground. Another protester attempts to jump on Rittenhouse, who then fires two shots into the air. Yet another protester then strikes Rittenhouse in the back of the head with what appears to be a skateboard while reaching for the teen's rifle. Rittenhouse fires a single shot, striking the man in the chest. The video appears to show another protester advancing with a handgun aimed at Rittenhouse, who fired off a round and struck the man in the bicep. So you got a convicted child molester who's lighting fires, who has the first exchange here with Rittenhouse. A bunch of shots ring out, likely at Rittenhouse. Someone's firing at him. And then the mob tries to, and we've seen this video many times, physically assault him. The mob tries to take his weapon and I'm sure kill him with it. Somebody who's attacking him has a pistol in his hand when he's doing it. I think they just didn't believe that Rittenhouse would actually use his rifle. I really think that that's a big part of this. They figured, he's just some, MAGA hat wearing, wannabe. They just figured that he wasn't really going to do anything with it. And so they could attack him and, beat him senseless, maybe kill him. And And they found out, at least some of the people attacking him, that that was not true. That he was willing to use the rifle that he brought to that riot scene in self-defense. And this, friends, is a really a foundational issue for our rule of law in this country. Do you have the right to defend yourself? The police officers in the Brianna Taylor case, they were being shot at after they knocked and said police. If we're going to say that they're not allowed to shoot back then, you're saying the cops can never shoot. So at least they didn't try to charge those cops with murder, but that would have been outrageous beyond words. But they are charging one officer with 3 counts of reckless endangerment. So there's that. And then you also have this case in Kenosha where someone used a rifle to defend himself. They're charging with first-degree murder. I mean, a depraved, really the highest crime in our legal system. I mean, you could get the death penalty for first-degree murder. They're going to execute this kid because he didn't allow himself to get beaten to a bloody pulp and maybe murdered with his own weapon or murdered with the weapons that these other lunatics who were rioting had. How could any person of good faith and any person with a decent sense of justice see what's happened in some of these cases, see what happened in Omaha, where when a prosecutor reviewed the footage, it's on video, said, yeah, you can't actually tackle a guy to the ground who's got a gun and try to beat his face in and think that he's not going to shoot you. Sorry. That was the first pass at it. But, oh, no, the mob demands a scalp. The mob demands there has to be charges against people who are trying to defend themselves. It's appalling, friends. This should not be happening, but this is increasingly the country that we live in, where prosecutors know that it's not just their election prospects, because prosecutors in many places have to, district attorneys have to run for office. It's an elected position. And other prosecutors who are just on-line prosecutors, as they say, they don't want their careers to stall out. They want to be elevated. They want to be the attorney general for a state, or maybe the attorney general of the United States. They want to be an AUSA or the U.S. attorney. They don't want to just be a district, an assistant district attorney. And then there's the safety considerations that are raised for that, for the prosecutors and the politicians that are pushing for some of these things. Because if you believe in self-defense now, you may, and you're a public figure, you may find yourself on the wrong side of a mob gathering outside of your home. You may find yourself in a situation where you have an angry mob that has gathered and that's threatening your wife and children because you believe the Second Amendment and the right to self-defense are in fact the law, because they are. But people don't want that. They don't want that attention. We are seeing a very unfortunate period here of cowardice that is growing within the legal system, and the angry mob is exploiting it.